Good morning. My name is Malcolm Clemens Young. I'm the Dean of Grace Cathedral here in San Francisco, and welcome to the Forum Fall season. Jack Clark is the iconic varsity rugby coach at the University of California. His team-building abilities are considered legendary within university circles and throughout the corporate sector. Since becoming head coach of the Golden Bears in 1984, Clark has led the rugby program to 30 national collegiate championships. Yeah. Entering his 45th year overall and 43rd as head coach in 2025-26, he holds an all-time winning record of 732 wins, 106 losses, and 5 ties in 15s, and 230 wins, 23 losses, and 0 ties in 7s. He has produced 157 All-Americans, 60 players on the U.S. national 15s team, 1 two-time Olympian, and 6 players who have earned their blues at Oxford. Clark is also a former head coach of the U.S. national team, which won an improbable 16 victories during his term as coach, the most in the history of U.S. rugby. He has also coached the all-time American team and led the all-Marine rugby team to the silver medal at the Armed Forces Championships. Today, we're going to be talking about the art of team building. Jack, thanks so much for joining us. And I didn't say, it doesn't say this but you were the best coach I had. I've had so many coaches, and by far, you're the one who I keep coming back to. The things I learned from you. About a month ago, I was just like, I was giving somebody advice, and it just came right from you. It was choose your moments. Don't run all out the whole time, but choose those moments. So anyway, I appreciate it very much. But I wonder, you have had such an incredible career as a coach, but I wonder if looking back as a player, what moment as a player do you particularly remember, or do you look back on, or can you think of?
Well, first, it's really good to spend some time with you, Malcolm. It's been a while.
It has.
And yeah, it's like another lifetime ago thinking about yourself as an athlete. I'm smiling at 70 years of age, and I'm thinking about when I was an athlete. Well, that was a while ago.
And yet for me, when I met you, you'd only just, being an athlete was a big thing.
Yeah, I was new into it. My early coaching was hurry up and try harder. I didn't really have much, but yeah, I think that my takeaway was the impact that my coaches had on me.
Yeah.
I was really blessed. As a young boy playing sports, it was always healthy and good, and something you could build on. Even if you weren't successful on the day, it was still it was an important moment in time to lose, right, or to win, I suppose. And then the coaches that were teaching those lessons, they just kept getting better at it. And then at some point, they were all professionals, and they were really good at it. And I think it was in high school that I first started saying, I might want to be a coach one day.
Yeah, I was wondering
that
about
might
that.
be a good thing for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I had some coaches that were part of that hurry up and try harder. I had a coach one time, it was, you boys here, I want you to pair up in threes. I can remember thinking, if you can give that kind of advice, and people like hustle to do it, I'm going to be a coach one day,
Yeah. I just think, just what it was like for you as a player, as both of rugby and football and basketball. What made you gravitate towards sports as a young person?
It was always an outlet. It was always something. Hurry up and get done with your schoolwork so you can play. And play sports was there were no screens. I mean, these poor kids today, they got multiple screens, calling their attention. We didn't have any of that, did we? So you'd go out and play, and it felt like a really healthy, good thing to do.
Yeah, I swear. One of the questions one of my assistants said we should ask you about is the game they play in heaven. But, literally, I sometimes fall asleep. I just see myself running. We're on Strawberry Canyon, where I'm running up the field, and, H.B. Drake is passing me the ball.
That's right.
Anyway, for many people, rugby is something that's so foreign and strange, and you must have people ask you this all the time, but how do you explain the game of rugby to people who may not know much about it yet?
To not get
In the weeds.
too bothered by what's happening. I mean, the teams are going in opposite directions, and when you get in the try zone, it matters, right?
Yeah.
And you got to pass the ball backwards. You can kick it forwards. You got to tackle the guy with the ball. I try to keep it as simple as I can so they can enjoy the athleticism in the whole thing. It really does take a melting pot of skills to be a good rugby player. Everybody has to pass the ball. There's nobody that doesn't. And if you have to pass the ball, you've got to pass it to whom and when, and then of course everyone has to make their own tackles. There's this share of the dirty work that has to get done, and so it's a very there's a lot of democracy in the game in a way. You know, it takes a lot of different body types to play the game well. Ideally, you need some guys that are kind of shortish, that are built like fire hydrants.
Yeah.
And you need some tall guys that can go up and have aerial skills and go in the air and get the ball like yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, it makes sense to me that if heaven's a hard place to get into, rugby's a hard sport to play, and it's not for everybody, and but it welcomes everybody.
Yeah, I remember the first time I ever played in a rugby game in Sacramento on this hard-baked surface. It was just like totally, there was no grass growing on it. It was like concrete, but it was made out of dirt. And I remember just like getting the ball and leaping and like and breaking tackles and then I touched the ball down and it was on the 20-meter line. So it was like almost like thinking you'd scored a touchdown 20 meters too soon. But the whole, my team just like they said, "What are you doing? Like, why didn't you pass the ball? Like, what? Are you part of the team or not?" And you're right. It's that democratic part of just like each of us making our contribution. Each of us can score. Each of us makes a difference.
That's right.
Yeah, I really like that. I wonder about just like your first experiences of rugby. Like, what did you notice? How was it introduced to you? I just had a bunch of guys in my school, and they were like, "Hey, you should play rugby."
Yeah. I had a high school football coach who was an assistant coach who played. I grew up in Huntington Beach, California, in Orange County, and he'd played for the local Newport Harbor or Newport Beach rugby team, and I remember going out and watching him play, and it was fun to watch one of your coaches, compete. And I thought, well, that's a good game. I think I'd like to do it. I was just too busy playing, our traditional sports.
Yeah, basketball, football, and track.
That's right. But by the time I went to Cal, it doesn't take long as a Cal football player. I was playing football at Cal that somebody taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, it's rugby season. Let's go." And I went, "Really? That's what we're supposed to do?" Yeah. And so you went out with like 20 of your football buddies, and we went and played rugby in the winter, and it didn't take long, before I went, wow, it was a combination of basketball and football in a way, so yeah, I loved it from the get-go.
Yeah, I just think of Gary Hines and the other guys who played football too. It must have been a challenge to just do both things. But I never really talked to them about that or what it felt like. In a way, I felt like they loved the game more than anyone else because they had all the attention for playing football, but they just played rugby for the love of the game.
That's right. Yeah. You do it for yourself.
Yeah. Many people may not realize it, but there's a history of playing rugby at Cal, and I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that history and why is Cal just why is rugby so important at Berkeley?
It's our first sport, so we started playing rugby in 1882.
Yeah.
And then we eventually, we're a new country, and rugby is a British sport, and we're looking to play our own games. Speak English and let's build our own cultures here. So we morph rugby into American football.
Yeah.
And so we became we went from a rugby university to a football university, as did all the local high schools and universities in the area. And the early days of American football, gridiron, were quite dangerous.
Yeah, right.
There were these flying wedges, and there were a couple deaths, believe it or not. It was really a brutal game. The tactics were, battle of the bulge, just go after them right in this spot right here, and when you damage this area enough, other things will open up for you by way of opportunity. Brutal tactics and strategies. And so by presidential decree, we go back to playing rugby as our main sport. And in my office, in the field house that I work in, there's a lot of photos of 50,000 people watching rugby at the turn of the century. And that's the what could have been moment, really, for rugby could have been what we know as American football now. But we eventually, listen, there's a strong pull to be an independent country, play our own sports. And so we go back to playing football full time, and rugby becomes a secondary sport, but one that's still played by football players playing their second sport. And we've been okay at it, right? We've been pretty good at it over time. And the coach that was before me had the job for 10 years, Ned Anderson, and before him, it was Miles Doc Hudson, who was
Doc Hudson
was a local dentist and that became our rugby coach for 38 years. And the team traveled internationally and developed a really good reputation. And then those same people over time that have that played the sport, they wanted to make sure it was always played at Cal, so they've endowed the sport. Philanthropy was really important to the history of Cal rugby, and the fact that so many people have kind of paid that experience forward to make sure there was always a rugby team. And so here we are today. I don't think rugby is supposed to be in the intercollegiate athletic department at the university, but it is, and we're proud to be there.
Yeah, and a lot of it is you picking up the ball and carrying it the way that you did over these last 40 years.
Yeah,
and I remember Ned Anderson. I was like, just between the two of us, I was like, who's that Ned guy? Because you were in a way, I don't know if he was stepping back intentionally, but you had already really stepped forward at that time. It was even that early. One of the things I think so much about is, rugby's a game. They're 40-minute halves. So it just takes a lot of endurance to play so intensely for 40 minutes. And then you have like a short halftime, then another 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And I wonder, kind of what your philosophy is for what you say during that short period of time between those two 40-minute periods.
Not much. Try to keep it pretty simple, right? I don't know really what everybody is hearing at that point, because you're right. People are fatigued, and there's a lot of wear and tear. You take some body blows, so when you get to that interval at 40 minutes, you're already pretty beat up. You're not going to be able to have a lot of. We have a limited number of substitutions that can come in the game, so most guys are going to play the full 80. So you try to keep it simple. A handful of things, and if I'm going to dig in on anything, it's that we all hear what these few things are, right? That everyone's opting in to those fixes. I don't want to give them 6 things, and we're going to independently opt into 3 of those things. Let's all of us tighten up the area.
Keeping it simple, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember coming out of the locker room and feeling like a kind of new life, after hearing, what you said. So I don't remember the specific things, but, you're right. I guess it's maybe like make your tackles, or,
That's right.
Let's not keep the ball in loose play as long, or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's nuanced, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? I think if we talked about coaches on the extremes, we'd say there's the my way or the highway coach on one extreme, and then there's the quote players coach on the other extreme, that person that's really empathetic about the player. And the fact is, both of those things have their moments, and they're both they have a degree of success, but there isn't any absolute success in either approach. I think coaches need to be somewhere in the middle where they can speak directly without a lot of fanfare, without all the techniques. What do they say? You sandwich the information, good and bad, and you listen. There's not enough time sometimes. What you need to do is be direct with people and tell them what they need to do that will help them. If there's one bit of advice I would give a coach, and I'm almost regretting saying advice, but if people know you care about them, they care what you have to say. If they don't think you care about them, if they're not sure of that, they'll undoubtedly care a lot less about what you have to say and when you coach. So there is just something very powerful about building relationships with people where they know you have their best interest at heart. And if you care about them, they'll care about what you have to say.
Yeah, and I mean, when I think about you, I think about someone who's direct, and I felt like you respected me enough to be honest with me. And I think you're right, because we had a relationship. And I just, even as people are coming in to see you today, I was just thinking, oh my gosh, it's just like, and even just like 157 All-American rugby players. I mean, it's just like the sheer volume of relationships that you've built. I mean, we're talking about Pete Frechette earlier, a coach who I'd had, he last coached me in 1984. And, that's a huge web of relationships. And there must be something very satisfying about having those connections with people.
Yeah, it is. It's why you do it, right? There's a bunch of shiny goblets in the showcase. They look pretty good in there, and I'd assume win the trophy is not win the trophy. And I like the top of the podium. That's a nice place to be. But I think it's really the idea that these players are they're getting an experience that I hope would give them really an acute understanding of team. And I would hope that they would take that understanding into their families and into their communities and into their workplaces. So that's the long game. And where I sit today, it was the commanding officer at Top Gun. It's the partner at Goldman Sachs. Yeah. It's the venture capitalists in the Valley. It's teachers and doctors, and the amount of further academic scholarship that our players have gone on to, like yourself, the amount of professional success that they've attained. That's really what we're doing. I'd want to contribute to that over the next 40 years more than I want to win a shiny goblet, but I want to win those two.
And it does. I'll tell you one memory I have where we were in San Diego and we were playing, a tournament down there or something. And one of the players was going to an interview with an investment bank. And I just remember you talking to us and just saying, hey, the rest of your life you're going to be going to interviews with investment banks, but this is your chance right now to play rugby. And here I am still all these years later thinking about, how do you prioritize? How do you make good choices about what's right for now? But yeah, so you're right. We're all spread out to all these different places, kind of carrying what we learned with us. I have so many questions about rugby itself. One is just forwards are kind of like linemen in football, and I've always had forwards as my head coaches. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit. Is that unusual? Is that normal? Is it perfectly balanced between whether backs become coaches or forwards become coaches? I don't even know if you thought about that before.
Yeah, I don't think I have. There's obviously a lot of coaches that were backs is where they played and is where their expertise is, and they're very good head coaches. And there's plenty, obviously, that are forwards as well. To play the game, you got to win the ball, and forwards win the ball. So if you don't have possession, you kind of watch the other team play and try to keep them from playing. So if you want to play, you got to have the possession, and maybe that's why everything, it's like a pebble hitting water and it ripples out. The first, you got to get the ball first.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's why. But I think there's a fair collection of backs as well.
It may be partly too just because I didn't understand what the backs were doing. It was like scissors and all these plays they'd call, and I just so you think that they're smarter than you or they know more about what's going on.
Yeah.
One of the things that's there's been so many changes, but I wonder if you can talk a little bit about technology changes and how that's affected coaching. When I was a young man, you basically type out all the names of all the people who are playing and post it on the locker room door.
Type it out, yeah.
But how has technology changed things, and how have your players changed too?
Yeah, well, technology first, I guess. The internet, right? I mean, that changed quite a bit. It's like we almost forget that. When I began coaching, there was the local tobacco shop had foreign newspapers, I remember.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I would go into the local tobacco shop, and I would at the time, buy a $5 London Times or a Sydney Morning Herald or a pick your foreign newspaper just to read the sporting section. It was that was half of my dispensable income for the month. But it was important to kind of connect to the rest of the world. there was a time when I knew somebody that could smuggle in old VHS tapes, that they would take the tape off the TV, and the quality wasn't very good, but boy, it was like a drug deal or something. I mean, you'd meet the guy and he'd hand you the video and you'd run off and put it in right away, and you just couldn't wait to see it. It was taboo, I mean, we're not supposed to. And then all of a sudden, these players today, they wake up and their whole feed's full of whatever they want to see. They can see a training video, they can see content, highlights, everything. And then to the team itself with technology, we videotape, of course, and we always did, but now that's digital, and so you can put it into a machine, and you code the game, and then you hit a button, and that player gets all their moments, on their phone.
Really? Is that
class.
True? So a person just say all the times I handled the ball, and you can just see
every time they handled the ball, every tackle they made, every piece of the game that they were involved with. And then you can get together as groups. You can sort it however you want to sort it. But once the game is coded, you can talk to the software and pull up any kind of report you want. So yeah, I mean the amount of changes are tremendous, and there's screens on the sideline, so you can look at formations right in real time. I used to have to guess at what was going on and try to bluff my way through what was happening. Now I can just see it, and I can be a lot more accurate in what I'm saying.
Wow, that is fast. I didn't even know about this. I mean, so basically, I didn't know how advanced the technology was, but it certainly must spread like different kinds of strategies. So a strategy that might be successful in Ireland, everybody around the world is going to be able to see what that is.
That's right. Sure. That's right.
Yeah. Has the strategies changed as a result of it?
Yeah, the ball's in play a lot more than it used to be when you played in the mid-'80s. I think in an 80-minute game, the ball was in play, about 25, 30 minutes. Yeah. There was quite a bit of time when we were walking somewhere, or jogging somewhere to put the ball back into play. The ball just doesn't go out of play that often now. So the in-play moments are, as much as 50 minutes of the 80 minutes where guys are competing. And yeah. So I think that's the main change. And if you're, to your example, if you're in Ireland and the grounds are soft and it's a misty day, maybe you have to play to those conditions as well. And if you're on a hard-baked Southern Hemisphere field somewhere where it's dry and fast, maybe your play should reflect those conditions as well.
Yeah, that's what happened. I remember playing a game in British Columbia where it had been pouring rain. It was just such a shock for us from California. We played terribly. It was awful.
Oh.
But anyway, tell me something.
I heard you, and I get caught up 106 defeats. I don't really look at those numbers very often. I go, wow, 106 times we lost.
So one of the things I have questions about, I've always wanted to ask this, and I just always, you show respect for your coach. But so one day you're coaching Cal rugby, and everybody had known just like how you're so modest, how excellent you were as a player, as excellent as you were as a football player. But you're coaching Cal, and they say, hey, listen, we want you to be the national coach. Like, what was that like? I mean, and what is it like to be on the international level, especially when rugby in America, it's a lower level than other places.
Well, it's still an honor. That's still our flag.
Yeah,
and if you're coaching the national team,
yeah,
we had a hard time breaking into the top 10. But it was. It's a privilege, and I always thought I would like to coach the national team if it was right. I thought that you had to do it full time, and that created a career change in order to free up your time to work at it full time. But it was a fantastic experience, and one that I greatly enjoy. So many wonderful memories. I think our first international tour, real international tour, would have been to Ireland, and I can remember the knock at the door, and you're in the locker room, so now it's time to go out and play.
Yeah, what was
We
that
go
like?
out into this hallway, and
Yeah.
I'd kind of said my bit to the team, so I was pretty quiet at that point. I'm at the back behind the team. We're in the hallway, and we're going to lead to the tunnel, and we're going to run out onto the field. And this is Lansdowne Road. It's like one of the cathedrals of rugby, right? And I could hear the announcer say, "Ladies and gentlemen," and there was this buzz in the stands. There's a lot of people out there, and they went deathly quiet. And he says, "From the land of the free and the home of the brave." And I'm like, wow, this is really happening now. The hairs on my back of my neck were standing up, and the United States of America, and we ran out, and it was like, whoa, this is unbelievable, right? And afterwards, there's a reception. We played really well. Ireland was very good. We lost by 10 points in the game,
gosh,
but it was
that's
a
great.
very, very good
Yeah.
showing of us.
Yeah.
We'd won a big game on tour against Ireland A the weekend before. But I asked our liaison officer, "Who's the stadium announcer? I want to go tell him I really appreciated that." And of course, there's always a story. He had taken over. His dad had done the job for 30 years, and he had just taken over. And I told him that was such a fantastic, entrance for the team. I really appreciate that. Well, flash forward, we went back to Ireland again in 1999, and we were at the Rugby World Cup. And same knock, same hallway. I'm going, he's going to do it again. And he goes, "Ladies and gentlemen," and he goes, pin drop quiet. And he says, "From the great republic to the west, the United States of America." And I went to the same reception afterwards, went and found him. He goes, "I thought you'd like that." He says, that's how John F. Kennedy was introduced when he came with Jacqueline and to Ireland that day. And I went, wow, that's a good bit of history.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, what amazing experiences. And what do you think the prospects are for U.S. rugby just going into the future? It's just, I think you're right about this. I think the technology of being able to see videos and having them condensed so you can see a whole game condensed into 7 minutes. I mean, my son sends me like text messages, "Hey, watch this game, Dad."
Yeah, that's good.
But it means that we're much more conscious of like what's going on in the international rugby world. And I just wonder, kind of what the future holds for America.
Well, we can be hopeful
Yeah.
and continue the good work at the youth and high school and university level, and hope we push enough good players to where whoever the national team coach is, they have a good team. But it's difficult, right? I think the world refers to America in the sport of rugby as the sleeping giant, And I take offense a little bit at it, right? It's sleeping. We're not sleep. We're hyperactive in our own sports.
Yeah.
Is what we are. I mean, yesterday on that Saturday, do you have any idea how many stadiums across America had 50 to 100,000 people watching the sport? Not dozens, right? 100 maybe, right? And so you get paid generational wealth playing our professional sports nowadays, right? I think about my football coach at Cal was a great guy. I'm still close to him, Mike White, and I think MW would have made, I don't know, 50 grand or something like that to be the football coach, and he was putting up tents up at the Bears' lair, to make a couple extra bucks,
Yeah.
It was now you can't get there to where there's coaches making $10 million a year. There's so much money in our sports.
Yeah.
It's such a pool, and that money isn't in rugby. So we're not going to get the very best of America's athletes, but we're going to get a good sampling, and we can be hopeful, I think.
Yeah, it's so interesting. You and I were talking about just how much college players are making, and I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that too. The beginning of paid athletes in college sports, and how does that look to you?
It looks dicey, is what it looks. It looks like we might regret this one day, but I get told a story that there was apparently some kid in his dorm room at Cal that was playing with his guitar and created an app called Guitar Hero or something, and he made $1 gazillion. And I'm thinking, well, if some kid in his dorm room can make money, how come a football player can't make money? So you can't argue against it, really. But there's been three big things in college athletics. One is conference realignment, where these traditional conferences that we've played in forever are somehow not good enough anymore to the bankers, which are the broadcasters, the television people, in billion-dollar contracts. They want certain teams and certain universities in their matchups. So we play no longer in our traditional, Pacific Coast Conference. We now play in a conference on the Atlantic Coast, which makes no sense.
Yeah.
And so there's been that change, and then there's a thing called the transfer portal, where it used to be if you went to Stanford was your school. If you went to Harvard was your school. Now, you go for a year or two, and you change your mind, you go somewhere else if there's a better opportunity, right? Again, I mean, the coach was always allowed to move where he wanted to move. How can you tell players that they don't have that same mobility? Of course they do. But that's affected my alma mater part, and then the last part is name, image, and likeness, called NIL, where you can actually get paid to play the sport. And there's been it's very fluid. There's a lot of changes. Now it's the universities themselves, through revenue sharing and a cap of $20.5 million, but the universities themselves will pay their athletes now. Most of that money will go to football players, some will go to basketball players, but a little bit will go to what's the other 28 sports left over. But for the most part, that money will go to the best football players, who, to be fair, are bringing in the money. That's where the money comes in.
Yeah.
So all of those things together do you wish it wouldn't have happened that way? I kind of do. I wish we had our old conference. I want guys to have valuable experiences at university. I'm not so sure that, taking money from this school and playing, then going to this school and taking a new contract and money, and then some people have been to 3 universities now, right? Taking money from each of them. Is that what was intended? I don't think so. So it's something being navigated right now by all the people that are parts of the puzzle.
Yeah, Harry Edwards was one of our guests here, and you talked about paying college athletes. It's just, you're right. It's like these traditions are just shattered, and you're right. I wonder if it's good for people to go to 3 different universities and always be kind of working a better deal. The other change that I noticed just is gambling too in college sports, and I wonder if you have any ideas about that, or can tell us what's going on with it.
Well, I mean, it's dangerous, isn't it? That there's such access. Kids, college students can gamble on their phones and get in over their heads very quickly. And now, of course, the worry when it comes to sport is that somebody that owes a lot of money might try to get some information to pay back that debt. That I saw so-and-so in the training room this week. He don't look like he's 100%. Well, that's in the gaming business, I suppose that's pretty valuable information to somebody. So, yeah, it gets a little funny. You would hope that, and we've had incidents, haven't we, that go back a long time in American sport, where where participants in the sport themselves, players and coaches, gambled. So you just hope that that doesn't become a negative influence. I haven't seen it yet. I'm get my fingers crossed. There's a lot of checks and balances to make sure that doesn't happen, but.
Yeah, I mean, this is our chance to ask you too, because I mean, they're like you said, it's just in 10 years, these are monumental changes, and it's really hard to understand when you're just like in the normal public, why Cal's not in the Pac-12 or 10 or whatever anymore. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about, I have so many questions, but so artificial turf and surfaces, so how do you prepare athletes to play on those surfaces? And just like, what is your take on them all?
Well, we have synthetic surfaces now at Witter Rugby Field, which used to have this beautiful natural grass field. I was so proud of it. But I would go home at night, and I would think, is somebody on my field right now?
Right, right,
I
completely.
was like the grouchy old guy in the neighborhood. Get off my lawn, And of course, there would be somebody, climbing a fence to go play on that field, and so, and then, it rains in the winter here, and we would have contests where we would rip up that grass.
Oh, yeah, right, in one
and
game.
then that stays ripped up for a while, and so we would always be cautious in training about being off to the side. To not, once we put down that synthetic surface for the first time, my worries went away.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like unbelievable. And every generation it gets better. The synthetic surface we have down now has a very, very similar cleat in, cleat out feel than natural grass. It has the density in the pad underneath. It feels like really good, a really good natural surface. And some of those natural grass surfaces, as you point out from your Sacramento sun-baked field days, are hard as a rock. You dislocate your shoulder just looking at the ground. They don't even have to throw you on the ground. Right? So. I think they're getting better, and it's we're not in a position with facilities where we can just have a handful of people play on one field once a week, and we'll keep it really nice. That's not going to work, right? We're always going to have multiple sports, multiple users of a field, and the synthetics are probably the way to go from a cost standpoint.
Yeah, and you teach the guys how to,
It's getting better. I mean, I almost have to teach guys when we're on hard fields or muddy fields how to look after themselves more. I mean, there
that's
isn't
the new norm.
It's the new norm, and there isn't really a problem.
Yeah, weightlifting. So when you were in high school, weightlifting was just not nearly as ubiquitous. How has that changed the game of rugby? And how do you, what do you see in terms of changes over time with training?
That you mitigate injury through it, right? I mean, that's how you protect yourself. It's how you run faster, jump higher, play better, but it's also how you protect yourself. And so we believe in it, and a lot of what we do is off an Olympic bar, so we're not laying on our back doing bench press. We're moving weight in a ballistic way.
Yeah.
We say that if you train slow and heavy, you get slow and heavy. You train quick and dynamic, you get quick and dynamic. So we're forever trying to make sure guys have the right core. If you have the right core, you can transfer power. And we want to be explosive athletes, and we want to mitigate injury.
Yeah, I got an email this week from someone who asked you and I to talk a little bit about Mark Bingham, the 9/11 hero who I don't even know how to describe what he did, but maybe you can describe it, and I'll tell you what I thought of what he was like. For me, he was like kind of like a puppy almost. He was like, rugby was so new to him.
Yeah.
He's just like, he just opened it all,
He played a little bit of high school rugby in the South Bay, and Mark played with us. He was a pretty good player, tall, rangy guy.
Yeah.
6'3", 4", long stride, and we just knew Mark as a teammate.
Yeah.
And actually, we last saw Mark on the spring before 9/11, and he'd come to a reunion, and he looked great. He looked fantastic, and he had a business where he was in the advertising kind of marketing business, and he had an office in New York and an office in San Francisco, and it was great to see him. I knew he was gay then. He told me then, right? And he kind of went around and was telling his teammates for the first time that, hey, by the way, I was gay. And guys looked at him like, so what? I mean, if he would have said, if he hadn't made his tackles or something, we would have said, can you tackle yet? Because I mean, we're so performance oriented. We don't that stuff doesn't mean anything to us, right?
Yeah.
But if you were a bad teammate, we'd remember 30 years later, right? And but I mean, all we know is what his late mom would share with us from the recordings, and we know that the people on Flight 93 knew about the other hijackings and knew that these hijackings weren't ending well. Bit of an important piece of information, probably, and that, that a handful of athletes on that airplane got up and, stormed that cockpit door. And as we now know, that plane was headed for the U.S. Capitol. The late John McCain confirmed that in Mark's eulogy on campus, that all the intelligence was very clear that plane was heading to the Capitol, and that Mark and those other heroes on that plane really were heroes. They saved the U.S. Capitol that day at great expense. So I mean, and we have that day coming up here.
Right, we do.
And
exactly.
we always do something as a team, and we're going to take a run very early in the morning with a big old flag right through the middle of campus.
Oh, that's great.
That's what we got planned for this year.
Oh, that's super. Who are some of the other players that just kind of stick out as you look back over the years? I mean, not to put you on the spot, but great stories from the people in my generation. But I wonder what other generations' stories you have.
Well, I think there's always been the best of the best, it seems to me. The question I get asked, Malcolm, is what are these guys like compared to, what it was before? And I think they're fishing for not as good, right? They're fishing for they're selfish, right? They're entitled, aren't they? I know what they're fishing for. And I feel like I'm the defender of this generation or something. I'm going, I don't know what you're talking about, man. I mean, the guys I'm coaching are as good as they've ever been. I mean, they're the best of the best, as best I can tell. How would they have gone in the greatest generation? Well, I don't know, right? I mean, that generation is the greatest generation for a reason, right? They did it. But I don't see any reason why they couldn't do it. They're selfless enough to do it. They care about others enough to be brave and to do all the right stuff and to grind and to do whatever it takes. So I'm, has that same technology, has all those screens in their lives, and has that changed that entire generation? Of course it has. They've got the world at their fingertips, on the information highway. Everything has changed for them. But at their core, I believe they're pretty damn special, and I just feel fortunate to have them in my orbit. I'm so happy to be their coach. So I'm of the belief that we're just pumping out a lot of guys who are going to make a real difference in the world. So. Yes, there's always really great players. There's always 4 or 5 players in the team that have a future in the game.
Yeah.
If they want, the rest of the guys are going to go pro in something else. But yeah, it's a privilege.
Yeah, that's great. I just think being around young people, it just keeps you youthful, it keeps you sharp. It keeps you adjusting to these huge monumental changes in sports that we've talked about in a way that I think when you're not around younger people, you can kind of check out from those changes and kind of be aloof from them,
Yeah.
One of the traditions we have on the forum is we take questions from our audience. And so Rebecca will take note cards, questions. She's great at collating them all. But I've got some strategy questions.
Yep.
One is lifting. So when the ball goes out of bounds and there's a lineup, they form a kind of a tunnel, and the ball gets thrown between the two, and they contest that ball. When I was in college, they didn't allow you to lift. So I think they probably did allow you to lift in faraway places, but at the college level, we weren't allowed to do that. When did that first start? We first start doing lifting, and what kind of adjustment was it? How did it change the kind of players and what success looked like for them?
I don't think it changed the players too much. It created some reliable possession for the attacking team. Is what it really did. It happened, I think, in the mid to late 90s is when the rule change was officially enacted, and it kept the ball in play longer, and it made for better, cleaner possessions. It's been a good change.
Yeah, so it means that there's less uncertainty. You know who's going to end up with the ball.
You should get the ball. You should win 9 out of 10.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. It's exactly what I was wondering. One of the questions I had too, thinking about, your record is just extraordinary. We're talking about winning 80 of your games. Uh, you, there are not that many coaches who are as successful as you are. And I wonder if you can talk about like why you are so successful at this, and what do you share in common from other coaches who've been extraordinary. But even in the newspaper, I'll read somebody about their record, and it's nothing compared to what you've been able to accomplish at Cal.
Well, good players make you a good rugby coach. If you forget that, you've totally lost the plot, right? I mean, I think it's a player's game, right? And I have a role, but good players is what it's about. I care deeply about what I'm doing. I'm, I have a bit of skill around motor learning. I understand how people learn. I understand what are the steps to teach motor learning. I think I'm a fairly good communicator as it pertains to getting everybody on the same page, so they know what it is we're trying to do. So we keep a sense of purpose about us on the field at all time. And I'm not afraid to be the coach. I'm not. They have friends already.
Yeah.
They have parents. They have uncles.
Yeah.
It all seems redundant if I'm after one of those jobs. What they need is a coach, somebody who is going to share with them the what it is they need to hear. So I think we've built a really strong culture that's value based. Our values are things that are that we talk about, we measure every day, and we say our mindset is grateful for everything, entitled to nothing, and we say that because there's just not enough gratitude in this world, and I have to remind guys of it. You put your dirty laundry on that loop and you throw it in this thing and it comes back. It's in your locker fresh. It's like let's start there, and through everything let's develop that right gratitude, and not really referring to social entitlements, but let's not think you're owed anything here.
Yeah.
Let's understand that everyone's they're gonna bring their best game when they play Cal, and that's what we want. And so, the culture of our team has been good, and it certainly flattered my win-loss record.
Yeah, I definitely want to learn how to make that culture myself. Okay, all right. I'm going to skip this first question because it's about me. Okay, could you address the impact that working in effective teams can have in forming a young person? Malcolm is our coach. That's the second question. The first question is, we know Malcolm to be a kind and gentle leader. Was he really an aggressive rugby player? I think you can just stick with the second one. So yeah, how do you...
Mean as a snake.
So how can the impact of working in effective teams form a young person? I got to say, from my perspective, to answer that question, if you can be really successful at one thing, it's transferable. You can learn how to be successful at other things.
Yeah, well, I think working, I guess it depends on what you think the answers to this whole thing is, right? I don't think we're like one bright person away from solving any of the big problems, personally. What are the big problems? Poverty, disease, the environment. There's got to be all the big stuff. I mean, we need like groups of people, don't we? I mean, standing shoulder to shoulder, pointed their nose in the same direction to go, fight the big stuff to make things better. And I think that players that are in a team setting that really values team, in some ways they're getting a PhD in team. They know what a good teammate's like. They know what a selfish teammate's like. They know what a good team. What are the qualities and values of good teams, and what are those? How would you characterize teams that aren't so good? Right? You develop this really acute understanding. So it's impossible to take that away and then not use it the rest of your life. So I certainly believe it's transferable.
Yeah, here's a great question. Coach, you said, quote, if people know that you care about them, they will care about what you say. So how do you express to each member of the team and only group of individuals that you care about them?
Yeah, just through your daily actions. I mean, I do meet with people individually. I love to model out their performances based on their strengths. I have this philosophy that everyone's always telling us the things we need to do better. And I want to flip that around. I appreciate there are things that we all need to do better individually and collectively. But I also believe that everyone has strengths. And the more we know our strengths, the more we can learn how to leverage our strengths. Those are the things that are going to carry us to success. I think it's a fallacy to think that the most iconic and successful people we know in business and sport, that they somehow check all the boxes. They really don't. They sometimes leave some boxes unchecked in a very glaring way. But what they typically have is a brilliance somewhere, and that brilliance is what carries them to success. So I'm interested in reminding players what their strengths are. That's a very intimate conversation, by the way. You know, I first started playing when I was on an airplane, and I was sitting next to a guy, and he was an author, it turns out. He was British, and we got around to rugby, and his name was Barry Conchie. He had written a book called Strengths, plural, Based Leadership. And it was really on this topic, you know, of this idea that everyone has strengths, and that you know, when they play to their strengths, they're so much more successful. And there aren't really well-rounded individuals, but there are well-rounded teams, and that's the basis of the book. So I've spent a lot of time with individuals, and it's a, like I said, it's a very intimate setting when somebody's talking to you about your strengths. You know, it's, you know, a normal meeting would be we'd get up and we're hugging all of a sudden. It's like, I'm going to see you in 10 minutes on the field. I mean, but nevertheless, that was that moment in time where no one typically is actually talked to them in great detail about their strengths. I mean, somebody might say, for example, you know, I think I'm a pretty good ball handler, a pretty good passer, and if it's true, if their idea of that strength is true, I might say, well, you're an extraordinary ball handler. You know, you have skill off either hand. Even your offhand is good. You have an uncanny way of weighting the pass properly so it's catchable. You have great accuracy in their length. I'm going to make that skill come alive is what I'm going to really do, because I want them to have a better, deeper understanding of it. I think those things lead to care. I also believe that you just go about your job. I mean, one of the I had some moments with the U.S. Marine team in the All Forces Championship, so I was going to a lot of Marine stuff for a few years, and I went to watch the Marines, these young Marines finish their crucible. This is the first time that they are going to be called a Marine by this drill sergeant who has been up there 6 night and day, right? And this is the first time they're going to get a globe and anchor pinned on him, and he's going to call him a Marine for the first time. And afterward is the warrior breakfast, where they eat some unedible food that I just pushed around my plate for a while. But they talked about this drill sergeant who had been really borderline abusive to them over this long period of time, but they talked about him with love. They used the word love, that they loved this guy. I think, you know, they knew that person's trying to give them the skills to keep them and the guy next to him alive. And they knew that. And I think if I just go about my job in the right way, and I'm fair and equitable in what I'm doing, and I'm demanding, that I think they'll know that I want what's best for them as well. So it's not all soft edges around let's be friends and then you're going to care what I have to say. You know, I think you let somebody know that you understand their strengths and you have a plan for them, for their development, and then you go about just doing your job and doing it as well as you can.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I remember not that one-on-one, although we did have one-on-one conversations. I just remember, you know, one day in the locker room at Memorial Stadium, you said, hey, young Malcolm Young, did you see how many lineouts he took today? That was it. And I still remember it all
Yeah,
these years later.
that's great.
And you're right. You saw what I did well on that day, and recognized me in front of my peers. And it wasn't even individual, but it still stays with you. Okay. Do you feel the money coming into schools through college sports is enough to pay for the cost of the school, i.e., is the juice worth the squeeze?
Well, it's a good question, and my take is yes, but I can see how other people wouldn't say that. Like, no one asks those questions of any other department. You don't expect
Chemistry department.
chemistry is not supposed to make money, are
Yeah,
they? They're supposed to educate people, right? And it's supposed to cost us money to do it. And I do believe I think our chancellor right now at the university is he understands, I think, that this is the front porch of the university, and that this is about alumni engagement and donor engagement, and so it's a fair question. Is it worth the squeeze? Is the juice worth the squeeze? But in my opinion, yes for now. But where is this going? I don't know. I mean, is everyone going to make $10 million a year here? And then maybe I'll change my answer at some point. But for right now, I think it's still heading in the right direction.
Yeah. Jack, what character traits do you look for in athletes beyond athletic ability?
Yeah, non-cognitive grit.
The next question is grit. Do we still possess grit in ourselves? Can rugby and athletic endeavor reignite that in us as Americans?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've got to find a way to celebrate it for sure. We celebrate everything but that sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm just remembered what's on display. So I have these visual of these players. If you win a national championship, there's some jumping around when the final whistle happens right away. Everyone's pretty happy for a moment there, and remember that the players, the field is 100 meters long and 65 meters across. So the players are pretty far away from me most of the game, unless they're on our touch line, and you don't get a chance to see them up close. But I have these memories of winning a championship, and by the time you get to the players, I'm struck. I'm aghast by the look on their face. Have you ever seen anybody finish a marathon? They look a little gaunt, and they get some circles under their eyes, and I look at their faces now. I mean, they'd given full measure. They had nothing more to give to their team and to their university. And I'm sitting there looking at that. And I think they played this moment in their heads a million times. And, they're emotional. Some of them are going to cry. And not once when they played this in their head did they cry, I'll tell you right now. They were all, I won the championship, I'm the man, and here they are, and then they get the chills right away on a nice night. It's like they're cold, and it's like they're completely depleted. Yeah. They have given everything. They have no defenses left. And people can talk all they want about grit, and that's grit. Yeah. Get yourself to that point where you give full measure and you keep going. It's remarkable. I wish there were better ways in which we could judge who has this non-cognitive grit. I mean, it's a lot easier to see who's got the best GPA and the best SAT score, and it's hard to dig deep and understand who needs to have success. Yeah. But when you find those people, you're going to have a winner.
Yeah, definitely. Is there a team you are excited to watch where you are learning or seeing different styles? I recently saw France in action, and they seem to be advancing the sport.
Yeah, there's no doubt they are. They have France has a highly professional competition, and of course, by the time you get to the French national team, those players are all full-time professionals, and they're going to have a bit of flair to how they play. So yeah, France would be one of the teams that would be innovative. I think you'd look at any of the Southern Hemisphere teams that they're fun to watch. They all played a little bit differently right now, which is kind of interesting to me. the South Africans are kind of bullies, and they just kind of come after you in a physical way. The Australians are still trying to manufacture a try out of nothing, and the Kiwis, everybody's super athletic, and a lot of Polynesian guys on the team, and there's good lessons everywhere in the sport.
Yeah, I love seeing you on the sidelines when you're at a Cal football game. Question for Malcolm. How do we use the lessons leading a rugby team and leading Grace Cathedral? Just all the things that Jack said about teamwork is just so important, and the democracy too. That we're all kind of passing the ball to each other, we're all supporting each other. But thanks for asking. Good morning. For those of us old Blues who remember the 1982 big game in the play, can you share any insight about the rugby aspect of the play? Oh, that's a great question.
Apparently, that's a Joe Cap team.
Yeah, right. I forgot about that.
And apparently, at the end of practice, they would play a game. They didn't call it rugby, but they would play a game where you could pass the ball backwards and they'd mess around. I can't remember the name that they called it, but they did it quite frequently. So the idea that we can't have the ball die here, we got to keep the ball alive, I think was born out of that. At least that's what a lot of the players had said. There were no rugby players in that movement.
Gary Hines was on the team, but
he was
wasn't on the field at that time.
Yeah, wasn't part of that thing. Yeah. But they all think they were rugby players at one point. One of the guys just literally threw the ball over his head. He goes, "Well, I saw him out of the corner of my eye." And I go, "No, you didn't. You shouldn't have ball over your head."
All right. This is another question. CTE and head injuries. Yeah. I don't know how the different sports are adjusting to it, like how they're taking notes, how they're changing things.
Well, it's a real thing, and it's I think there's rugby's always said it's safer than football, and it probably is. I mean, my foreign friends say, "Oh, what's that American football? They put all that protection on." I'm going, protection? That's hard plastic weaponry is what that is. It's meant to accentuate the hit. Yeah. We're not protecting anybody here. Nevertheless, I think that rugby has its share of concussion and head injury, and we have to mitigate it.
Yeah.
You're not going to stop people from falling off their bike, and you're not going to stop people in contact sports from getting the odd concussion, but what we can do is everything possible, and that list is day one before they participate. You get a baseline study on them where you develop a baseline. It's a computer-driven session that they would take, and you'd be able to judge their mental agility and speed and reaction. And then if they ever did sustain a head injury, they'd go back and take that test. And that would be part of the return to play. They would, if you think you're feeling great and you go back and you're still not there yet, So, and then there's protocols, in football now we have spotters that are looking for some kid wobbling a little bit. Number 27's wobbling. Let's go ahead, get a look at him. And in our sport, in rugby, we're very, very conscious. The referee is allowed to remove somebody from the game if they suspect anything. And the protocols are, if you have a head injury, you're not going to play sport for a long time. Weeks probably now, right? And it's how it should be, right? It's disappointing to lose those players, but we have to be careful. I think my concern really, I think we're doing so much at the collegiate level and the professional level at this point. My worry would really be for youth sport.
Yeah.
When nothing is developed, to include your neck, which has a lot to do with the whiplash effect that can bounce your brain off your skull. To make sure that we're not having problems at the youth level. That's where we can't tolerate concussion.
Yeah, that's such a big change. I had so many questions about that. I have so many more questions too, Jack. I wish I had another 2 hours with you. And I'm so sorry that our time's up, but I've got to go upstairs and preach a sermon, you know?
Yeah, that's great.
Please join us next week when my guest will be best-selling author and journalist Bonnie Tsui. We'll be talking about her new book, On Muscle, the Stuff That Moves Us and Why It Matters. You're also welcome to join us upstairs for Choral Eucharist at 11 o'clock. We rely on your support for the forum. Gifts of any size make a difference. There are many ways to give, including texting the word THINK, T-H-I-N-K, to 76278. Think to 76278. Jack, what a blessing. I'm always going to remember this, that you came in
cheers.
and met with us. Thanks you so
Bob.
much. Yeah.